electric.
Hi everyone, welcome back for another video update on our energy consumption and usage. As you know, on this channel I've been doing a test converting to electricity for our home heating and not using our oil boiler. So it feels like the end of winter. We're now into March, so it really does feel like spring's upon us. So if the winter's gone, time to summarise what I've learned, what I've seen, and what I think of heating our home with electricity versus oil. So that's what I want to do today, cover it as a summary. So for those of you that haven't seen the other videos, you can go back through my video list, playlists, and see what videos I've done before. It started by measuring our oil consumption from our oil boiler. And I basically know that we use between 350 litres and 650 litres of kerosene, oil to heat the home, depending on how frugal we are and how mild a winter it is. So for 350 litres, basically that's using our log burner lots and lots and not using the oil boiler as much as we can. So trying to preserve oil usage, and we get to use a log burner instead. Neither of which are very good for the environment. So please don't fill the comments with all the PM 2.5 things. One day I'll get off the log burner, but at the moment it reduces our oil usage. 650 litres, that's basically when I'm using less on the log burner, and it's a much colder, harsher winter. So more like Beast from the East, where you've got the heating on continually 24 hours a day, day in, day out for a few weeks. Price of the oil, that was 65 pence a litre for kerosene until very recently, presumably because of the invasion of Ukraine. It's now 85 pence a litre of kerosene. So price-wise, my 350 litres to 650 litres, and that price range of what it was, maybe it'll return to it, maybe it won't, or the price that it is now, we're talking a range of £227 at the absolute cheapest, up to £552 for oil to heat our home. So that was the starting point. I measured our usage, and then I wanted to see what I could do that's different. This isn't a plan to try and run our home from electricity using these heaters that I'm about to explain. This isn't a system that I'd recommend. It's not a system I plan to use. It's an example, a test to work out what it's like, what it feels like, how many kilowatt hours are we going to use to heat our home in preparation and planning for when the oil boiler gets replaced with a proper heating system. What do I want? How does it need to work? And how much will it cost to run and heat our home? All those sort of things. So whether it's a heat pump, whether it's an electric boiler, whether it's a TEPIO electric boiler with a storage core, or what else could I use? Sun amp heat batteries. There's so many electric options that when the oil boiler goes, we're going to have to go electric. That's my plan, to keep generating as much electricity as we can here and to power everything in our lives with electricity, and therefore use mostly our own energy to run our lives. That's the strategy, that's the plan. So what did I do? Well, I bought these radiator heaters from eBay and from Amazon. And I found these Von Haas ones were the most reliable and best ones for working with thermostats. Some of them are 7-fin radiators, some of them are 5-fin radiators. The 7-fin ones, their lowest setting is 1 kilowatt of power output, so 1000 watts. And the smaller ones are between 650 and 700 watts of power on the lowest setting. And that's how I run them, in the lowest setting. So it's much slower to heat the radiator up, and that slower, lower heat works better with solar power, so that I can balance what we're heating against solar when we have some solar. So that's what I invested in, and that's what I bought. I also at one point installed an infrared panel in our cloakroom to heat our cloakroom, but I haven't progressed and installed more infrared panels in our other wet room. So I'll come on to that in a moment. So let's again go through the detail. What am I heating? What's our home like? This is probably a 15-year-old house now. The insulation's quite good. It's quite well sealed now. I have gone through and sealed up some of the drafts that were coming through. It's double glazed. It does retain the heat quite well. So it's a very good starting point. Probably an ideal candidate for an air source heat pump. But if we start and look at what I've done, so in our lounge, that normally has 2 large radiators in the lounge plus the log burner. So 2 large radiators, that's been replaced with 1 7-fin oil-filled radiator, just 1 kilowatt. And that one, it's amazing, that 1 kilowatt heater is enough to heat the room. So it does seem odd that this really large, powerful oil boiler and 2 large radiators is what's in there to heat that room. It seems like an overkill. In the hallway, there was 2 radiators downstairs and 1 was removed to put a cabinet against the wall. So it only had 1 radiator. We've replaced that with 2 radiators, 1 7-fin, 1 5-fin, not because it takes 2 to heat the hallway, but it gives flexibility that sometimes we can have just the small one on, sometimes we can have the big one on. And when we're boosting first thing in the morning, then having both on really boosts it quickly. So that's why we've got 2 there. There is a radiator from the oil boiler upstairs in the hallway, but we have no power up there, no radiators up there that are powered electrically. So we haven't needed it. Heat risers, so we haven't needed any heat upstairs. So that covers that. The kitchen that I'm filming in now has lots of windows, and just to the side we have 4 glazed sort of door panels looking out over fields. So with the glass, when it's sunny it gets warm in here. When it's not sunny it's quite cold, and the heat goes out of the room quite quickly. It's a hard solid floor as well, so it's very cold. So it is quite a cold room, but we have no electrical heating in here. We didn't put any radiators in here at all. And that was by design, because when Susan's in here cooking, she says she doesn't want any heat source because the oven provides the heat. And we don't often sit here having breakfast in the freezing cold. Later on in the test, I did actually install a fan heater in here, just so that we could sit in the warm here and have breakfast, etc. So it's a very fast way of warming the room up. But using a slower radiator and keeping this room hot all the time seemed pointless, because the times that we're in here consistently, there was a heat source anyway. So no heat at all in the kitchen. And talking of no heat, so there was no heat at all in our 3rd bedroom, no heat at all in our spare room. Now those 2 rooms normally wouldn't have had a radiator on anyway, so it is like for like in those. So it's only the kitchen really that would have had a radiator on with an oil boiler usage, but we haven't in this test. What does that leave? That leaves our bedroom. Well, our bedroom's exactly the same size as the lounge. It mirrors that. It has 2 radiators in there, smaller size than they're in the lounge, surprisingly. But we don't like that room. We don't like our bedroom very hot, so we probably run it with the oil heating, probably around 16, 17 degrees, and it's definitely turned off at night. We don't like warmth in the bedroom. We prefer it cooler. We've replaced that. Well, initially I tried using one of the 5-fin or 7-fin heaters, but we found we didn't actually want the heat. It was too much, and we also looked at condensation problems in that room. So it is on the north side, and we have had condensation problems in there that have got to the point where there's a little bit of mold coming through. So rather than put a heater in that room, we actually decided to put a dehumidifier in there, a desiccant one that outputs heat as well. So to use it as a heater and also to reduce the moisture in the room. Now, I know the right way of doing it is introduce airflow and forced airflow, those sort of things. And that would make a lot more sense, apart from it to introduce a cold draft in our bedroom, which we do not want, and also because it costs about £1,000 or more to do it. So putting a £140 dehumidifier in and getting a result from that has been a very successful process. But anyway, I'll get into the results later. But that's what we've done. The bedroom doesn't have a heater at all. It just has the dehumidifier in it. Charlotte's bedroom, our daughter, that's the challenging room because she's in the room and stays in there a lot longer and therefore needs more prolonged heat. I've tested having a 5-fin radiator in there and a 7-fin radiator in there as well. When she needed more instant heat, the larger radiator worked well, but it was slightly overpowered for the room, or it really was overpowered for the room. The smaller one really works. But we did notice when it was like freezing cold outside and it was like -2, -3 outside, then the larger radiator helped heat the room up faster, etc. So we actually learn with swapping and changing the smaller and larger radiators what size we have and how to have it on longer to maintain the heat and make her comfortable in that room. What does that leave? That leaves our wet rooms, our cloakroom, our ensuite and our bathroom. They had no heat at all in to start with, because obviously there are no sockets, there are no electrical sockets in those rooms, so getting heaters in there isn't easy. I'd have had to have done some works to drill holes and potentially damage some of the wall tiling to get electric power in there. I eventually got an infrared panel in our downstairs cloakroom by accessing through the wall into our garage and powering it from a socket inside the garage, and that was useful for a test, but I haven't progressed, so we haven't had heat in our wet rooms at all this year. Now I say at all, when we got to January I did another test because I felt I'd understood what it was like with the wet rooms, and I did turn the boiler back on, turning every radiator off apart from the wet rooms, just to see what the performance was like, how much oil we used, just to heat those rooms for an hour or so in the morning and an hour or so in the evening. So one, to measure the oil content and the cost of doing that, but two, to experience again what it's like having radiators in there versus an infrared panel or no heat. So that's what we've done. That's the design of the house, that's the heaters. The results, let's talk about the results now, and how have we done cost-wise? So if I look back at how the year was, September was a good, mild, warm month, so there wasn't any heater use in the end of September. October remained mild as well. We didn't really use any heaters at all, so there's nothing really measurable, even for October. So starting with November, now I think if we look at our electric bills, we should deduct £10 off that bill to then derive how much we spent on heating. £10 because it's £6 or £7 for the standing charge, and because we have solar panels and a home storage battery, apart from February, we had really low grid usage. So just 2 or 3 kilowatt hours a day were paid for by the grid. So let's say £10 maximum for everything else, our heating, our cooking, our lights, and the standing charge for the electricity. So in November we had a bill of £28. So that's £18 went on heating, and that was 360 kilowatt hours for our entire energy consumption for the month. So £28 spent, 18 on heating, 360 kilowatt hours. December was £48 on the electric bill, 38 of that was heating. 562 kilowatt hours, so a lot more in December. It was a lot colder in December. We had a lot more frosts, so winter had really set in for December. January was the same, really cold with frosts, but it just improved a little bit more, and we had a little bit more solar. In fact, January was a really good month, wasn't it? So we had a lot more solar, because December was the worst solar month on record that we have. So anyway, January was £41 bill, £31 of that would be heating, 437 kilowatt hours. So it's back over the peak and it's on the way down on usage again. And February, the month that's just gone, £33 spent on electricity in total, 23 for heating, and only 279 kilowatt hours energy consumed from the grid, including everything. So if we add up all of those values, 18, 38, 31 and 23, that's £110 spent on heating with electricity. £110. So that is half what the absolute minimum of a mild would have been with oil. So that has worked out really, really well. Now our energy tariff, we are on OCTOPUS Agile Go, and we are on a tariff that was obtained just before some of the big price rises. So we're paying 4.5 pence per kilowatt hour between 3:30 in the morning and 6:30 in the morning, and 16 pence per kilowatt hour, roughly, during the rest of the day and evening. So 4.5 pence first thing in the morning, that's when I boost the heating. So we turn all the heaters on between 3:30 and 6:30 in the morning, boost the temperature of the house up to 19, 20 degrees. So it's nice and warm first thing in the morning, and it hasn't cost very much because it's only 4.5 pence per kilowatt hour. Then during the day, the heaters can stay on with solar, if there's solar. If there isn't, we turn the heaters on as required in the rooms that we're in, not the entire house, and therefore use the least amount of electric kilowatt hours as possible. Now that might have been slightly different with the oil boiler, because it's a central heating system and we don't have what do they call them, TEDO, smart valves thermostats on the radiators. There are ordinary thermostats on the radiators, but all of the radiators in the house are pretty much on, and there aren't thermostats in any of the wet rooms. So the oil boiler, I would say, is a less smart configuration and needed some upgrading with some better smart controls to use less energy in the first place. So one of the things that I've noticed through doing this is that my oil boiler configuration was wasteful, and I could have improved it if I really wanted to. So an inefficient usage of the oil versus a more efficient use, a more sensible use, shall we say, of the electric heaters, we've halved the cost of what we're doing, even on a mild, and I don't really think this was a mild winter necessarily. The times that I've used the log burner as well to top up, that was basically in the coldest of the days and when there wasn't any solar power. If there is solar power, the electric heaters are on and we don't need the log burner. If there's no solar power, then having the log burner on provides some heat and saves us using electricity at the highest priced rate. So I have used the log burner, but what's noticeable is that I've actually used the log burner less. So changing to electric and using cheap electricity overnight and having solar power to power our heating as well has resulted in us not only using no oil, it's resulted in us using less wood on the log burner. So it really is a method, a pathway to stop burning stuff. So that I'm quite impressed with, because the results and the natural changes I've gone through have shown that, one, we're going to get off oil at some point, and two, I think the fire will go. I mean, yes, it's nice to have it. Yes, it's nice to use it, but all of those particles, the dust and cleaning it out, it's not good for us. It's not good for anyone else. And yeah, I don't know what we'll replace it with for that cozy feeling in the room. But actually with the electric heating, it's been really, really good. It's been nice not having creaking floorboards. It's been nice having radiators that don't go ping and ting as they heat up and they cool down. Having electric heating has been absolutely silent. It's been odorless. It's been dust-free. It has been really, really good. So if we carry on from that theme about how it's felt, because we know that I've worked out that it's cheaper than using the oil, even at the current low prices. So even when my tariff changes and it doubles, say that goes up to £210 and does double, that's still only at the level of the lowest level of oil usage, and oil prices are just rocketing at the moment. So it is making sense to go electric. But as I've explained in a previous video, doing this sort of thing and heating your home with electric does rely on cheap energy periods. So that period may change, but if you're relying on cheap energy to do your heating and suddenly that cheap tariff goes away because it's really expensive the whole day throughout and you can't get a cheap tariff, then it could cost a fortune. I'm paying on average, I think some of those months I was paying about 7 pence a kilowatt hour on average for the whole lot, and that's because it's a blend of the 4.5 pence and the 15 pence, and then it's gone as high as 10 pence a kilowatt hour. So then I'm using less energy between the 3:30 and 6:30 period, and I'm using more energy, or more proportional energy, in the number of kilowatt hours outside of that, and hence the price per kilowatt hour has gone up. So although my consumption has gone down, the price that I'm paying has gone down as well. So let's go through room by room. How have we got on? As I've said, in the kitchen, we've got on fine. We haven't had any heat and we didn't really need any. Adding the fan heater in at the end has really, really helped, and is now giving us an instant warmth if we need it, so that's worked fine. The hallway's been nice and warm as well. Heating the core of the house, the centre of the house first, and letting the heat dissipate out across the rooms, that has worked out really well as well. None of the spare rooms are a problem. They haven't been an issue without heat. So let's talk about the lounge. The lounge has basically been excellent with that 1 kilowatt heater. I'm really surprised how little power is needed to provide a good, comfortable 19, 20, 21 degrees in that room with just that tiny radiator. Those 2 big radiators on the wall with the boiler are just an overkill, real overkill. And Charlotte's bedroom, she's basically commented that she much prefers having her own little radiator. She prefers it that The rest of the house can be cool. We can have the heating off, and her room is extremely warm because her radiator is on. So that flexibility and that ability to have it off completely when she's not there or doesn't need it, and have it on and as hot as she wants it, she is happier with that radiator. So some people I know have left comments on my previous videos saying, oh, your poor family, that you're abusing them, you're making them starve of warmth, etc. They must be going around with scarves and hats on. Not at all. Actually, Susan's completely on board with this and is enjoying the test, and definitely feels that we've got a warmer house just using these temporary heaters. So whatever we do from now on is just going to get better, but we have improved from what we had with the oil boiler. And Charlotte definitely likes it. When she's studying in her room, she really has it like a sauna in there, and it's working out really well for her. Our bedroom, now that's been the different one, hasn't it? Because we didn't have a heater at all. We went for the dehumidifier. And I am gobsmacked at how just such a small, simple device like a dehumidifier, we have it on a couple of hours before we go to bed. That provides the warmth and takes the chill off the room, so it's at the right temperature for us overnight. But it also removes the moisture. So it gets the moisture content down in the room from 60% relative humidity down to probably most nights it's around 47 to 52% relative humidity. That's the level we get the room down to. So by the time the morning comes, the room's back to low 60%. Now at low 60%, we're just starting to get a little bit condensation forming on the windows when it's freezing outside, when it's -1, 2, etc. So what we did notice was just leaving a gap on the curtains open to let the air circulate across the windows in that room means we get no condensation. So not only have we got the warmth and the heat that we need in the room, the condensation's gone. The risk of mold has gone, so it's much healthier in the room. And we haven't had to spend a fortune putting in ventilation systems. So really, really pleased with how that dehumidifier's gone. And it's so quiet that actually it just acts as a little bit of white noise in the background. It helps Susan sleep. I hear it a bit more than she does, but it doesn't really wake us up in the morning anymore. And in fact, we're early risers anyway. So we're finding that the dehumidifier, which does come on in the morning as well, if we have it on in the morning, then it clears any condensation that was starting to form on the window, just a small bead on the bottom. Whereas with the oil boiler, and before we realised about humidity, it used to half cover the windows on the coldest days with the condensation, and we'd have to use a Karcher Aquavac on, a window cleaner, vacuum cleaner, cleaning all the water up. It was a job to do every day. So I am gobsmacked at how, again, changing to these very, very basic ways of heating our house with electricity has improved the quality of heat and improved the quality of humidity in the house. And those humidifiers as well, the dehumidifiers, I actually bought two. I tested a heat pump one and the desiccant one. And having those means we can actually dry our laundry on the worst winter days indoors. Now, the heat pump one will only work when it's in a room that's 17 degrees or above, otherwise it keeps icing up and going through cycles, so it doesn't work very efficiently. So our spare room couldn't be used for drying laundry with that dehumidifier, but the desiccant one, that worked in any temperatures in any room. So basically we could put the laundry, if we needed some laundry on a day where there was no sunshine at all and we couldn't hang it outside, we now have a better way of doing our laundry and drying it without having any condensation and moisture in the house. So that's been another improvement, that we've got another better way of drying clothing, etc., and laundry in the winter period. Yes, you could say we could have a heat pump dryer. I know a lot of people have those, but we don't have space in our kitchen for it, so it'd have to be in our spare room or garage. So actually the dehumidifiers are more practical and easy, and I think they're cheaper to run than even the heat pump. And again, the heat pump will only work at room temperatures, otherwise they don't work as efficiently. So you've got to bear all those things in mind. So where does that leave us then? That leaves us with our wet rooms. And the wet rooms, that was the problem, because drying towels and having damp towels in a damp, moist room with no heating is not a good recipe. We had no mold, no issues with that because we had windows to open. And the downstairs cloakroom, when we fitted the infrared panel, instantly warmed up, and I found that it worked, but it didn't work as well as I thought. I thought we'd be able to turn it on for an hour or two and that would provide the heat and it would stay because it heats up the infrastructure, but it hasn't seemed to work like that. It was a mirror glass panel on the wall, 350 watts, and if you leave it on all day, so let's say between 6 and 9 hours a day, then that room gets really warm and it's perfect. So that's a couple of kilowatt hours that has to be used with an infrared panel to keep that room really, really warm. I think the only way to make the infrared panels work effectively is to link them up with thermostats and to keep the room at the right temperature. What I was doing of letting the room go back cold again and reheat it back up, that didn't work very well with the infrared panel, and that's why I haven't installed them in other rooms. In January we did that test turning the boiler back on just for those rooms, just for those wet rooms, and only at the lowest possible temperatures, and we used about 30 litres of oil, so about 20 pounds of oil to heat for 1 month just those radiators. So yes, it was an additional cost, but it did remind me that having warm towel rails and having warm towels was something that we really, really like. So for me, if I progress with this electric heating in this sort of way, I won't be putting infrared in our wet rooms. I'll be putting immersions in the radiators and running them off our Eddi. So our Eddi can boost or use solar power to heat the immersions like it does for the hot water tank. And we'd use them to heat our radiators. That's the route I would go because it was a preferred sort of heat. But it has made me think about the amount of cost. Now, I know it's only £20, it's not a huge amount, but that heat, that cost was going into a room that would only go into a couple of times. And when I was trying to aim the heat at a time when we're likely to use it, it always happened that we'd always get up early on a day and it wasn't warm in those rooms, or we'd use those rooms later in the day and again they weren't warm. So timing it without having it on permanently to have those bathrooms ready for you is an extra cost that if you don't have heat in there and it's not freezing cold, is there really any point to it? It's made me not question why we do it, because I know why we do it, because it's comfortable, it's nice, we like it, we like a warm room, we don't like to sit on a toilet seat that's freezing cold. But it is an overkill to heat a room that you're not going to use. It's almost like saying let's precondition my car outside and leave it hot all day because I might pop out a couple of times a day. We don't do that, do we? But we do heat our bathrooms and we only use them a couple of times a day for 5 minutes or so. So it has been an interesting learning curve to notice that there is a cost that goes to heating those rooms that we don't reside in for very long during the day. Heating it with these independent heaters has definitely made me realise that heating rooms independently that we're in, but keeping a nice steady core temperature, is much more efficient than how we were using the oil boiler of just heating everything to the same temperature and using ordinary radiator thermostats to regulate them. So it has been a great learning curve. On that issue about the immersions, that's how we heat our hot water, because equally those costs I talked about aren't just for heating the house, it's for heating the hot water too. And we use the Eddi device. That basically is a switch that turns on. Hello? Oh, hello. All right. So talking of immersions in the radiators and using the Eddi device, that's how we heat our hot water, because instead of using the oil boiler to heat the hot water, we've been using the Eddi device. It's basically just a switch and it turns on and off the immersion heater, which is a 3 kilowatt heater, but it can also regulate the amount of power that goes in. So if we've only got 1 kilowatt of solar, it only powers that immersion with 1 kilowatt. So we've used that device to heat our hot water. When we boost it in the morning at between 3:30 in the morning and 6:30 in the morning, because there's not enough solar during the day, so we've been boosting it, then it's at just 3 kilowatts. So it's just like an on-off switch off the immersion. So we're heating our hot water at 4.5 pence a kilowatt hour, and that takes 3, 4, 5 kilowatt hours a day to heat the hot water, and it's at cheap rate. So that's how we've been doing it in place of the boiler. In February though, there's been so much sunshine that I have been able to stop boosting it and not heating it first thing in the morning. And we've been heating it just from solar power during the day. So we've had hot water all day that we've needed. When we've just boosted it, I have noticed that if you have a couple of showers in the day and you've done washing up, etc., it definitely goes more warm than hot by the end of the day. But when we've got the Eddi with sunshine topping it up, it's hot all day, all the time. So there you go, that's the results. I am extremely happy with this test. I have basically proven that I can not only heat our house with electricity without a boiler, so if the boiler disappears today, I really won't be concerned at all. I will just carry on doing what we're doing now until we can get a full electric boiler system. But it's certainly made me realise that I want a more modular system. I want a system where the room heaters are independently controllable and also monitored. I love seeing the data of knowing how many kilowatt hours it's costing us to heat the room and whether that changes over time and which rooms are going up and down, etc. And my plan for heating the home using solar excess, that just makes so much sense to keep our bills down. And with the price rises, I mean, it's unbelievable, the price rise that's just so steep in oil at the moment. And it's going to be the same for electricity, and it's going to be the same for everything. So I'm insulated from that. Yes, moving to an electric heating system is scary if my bills are about to double, but when my bills are so small in the first place, they're hundreds rather than thousands, having them double or treble really isn't a problem. All it makes me think is, shall I add a few more solar panels just to give me more power even in the winter? Maybe a wind turbine, a bigger battery, all of those sort of things. It encourages me to have my own infrastructure so I'm less dependent on the grid and less affected by energy price rises. Anyway, let's hope the conflict over in Ukraine disappears soon and prices return to normal, and let's hope we get loads more renewable energy and no issues with gas, and therefore our prices of electricity keep coming down, because that's what we want. So yeah, my test and this video, I think it's really confirming that stop burning stuff, stop using a log burner, stop using your gas boilers, stop using your oil boiler. Those things are not just a reality, they really do work well, and it's not a compromise for you. That's what I'm finding in my test, and I'm looking forward to getting rid of that oil tank. I hate having an oil tank around the side of the house. I mean, the oil stinks, and the risk of having oil leaks and the contamination to the ground is awful. So bad, the risk of contamination, that some insurers won't insure your house if you have an oil tank. I mean, that's unbelievable, isn't it? You can't get house insurance if you've got oil heating in some companies. Really, really scary. Anyway, so the sooner we get rid of it, the better. And I hope this has made sense. I hope it's been useful and helpful to those people. And if this is the first video in the series you've just watched the summary, go back and have a look at the rest and see what it was like, and see what my last updates were. Hopefully you'll enjoy them. Thanks for joining the channel. Thanks for joining the journey. More videos to come. My monthly update on solar energy, and release the new electric car. I'm picking it up tomorrow. So tomorrow, hopefully on the way to go and pick it up, I will do a video and share with you what that car is, and hopefully share some images of the actual car itself. So yeah, EV videos coming soon, and the monthly update as well. Take care. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.